Right. Well, Lance, that was fantastic. And man, the video, I've seen the video before, that just ripped my heart apart. And it reminded me, guys, of what we've been talking about all year long. Everybody has a story. And one of the things that I think you saw in that video is Chick-fil-A understands that. And they go that second mile. The service they give is unbelievable. I've had the privilege of having two of my kids work for Chick-fil-A, my daughter Brooke, right here in Lee Summit, and also my son Trent. And Lance, I don't know if you know the story, but it thrilled my heart. Several months into Trent's employment, he was with my wife, I think at Kohl's, getting some clothes, and he opened the door for a gal, and the gal said, "Thank you." And the first words out of Trent's mouth was, "My pleasure." And that just warmed our hearts that some of the messaging that you have was making a difference in his life. This is back when he was 16, 17 years old. So that was really, really special. So we love Chick-fil-A. We love that Chick-fil-A is a huge sponsor of our golf tournament, and you guys serve our guests very well. It's such a special day to get a Chick-fil-A meal and have that service with a smile for our guys. But guys, if you've got a question for Lance, here's your chance to do so. I was with one of the Chick-fil-A operators in Lincoln, Nebraska, Dustin Andrews. Some of you know Dustin's grandpa, Marvin, who's part of our group, but I was with Dustin recently, and we just had a group of businessmen that kind of picked his brain on all kinds of stuff, and it was a fascinating conversation. And we talked about the history of Chick-fil-A. We talked about the that you guys squeezed lemons for years, squeezed in fact, tell us that story, because that's a fascinating story. And then guys will let you interact, but tell us about the squeezing of lemons and then how it's done today, because it has changed recently as well.
Yeah, it has. Well, I'd say the big picture is that we do a lot of things. We don't cut corners. So every morning we roll out biscuits. We got a biscuit mix and mix it with ice cold water and just a little bit of flour. And you'd be amazed if you went in their kitchen and saw how much hard work. I mean, we make about 200 salads a day, but it starts with whole heads of lettuce, and you wash the lettuce and get all the dirt off, and then you got to spin the lettuce and then chop it by hand, and that's just one ingredient, right? That's just the romaine lettuce. So we do a lot of things the hard way, which has made it challenging. It's a hard job for our team. And so over the last couple of years, we've tried to make it easier. But one of the things that we did historically in our restaurant is for our lemonade is we'd get 10 cases of lemons. So there's about 120 lemons in a case. And that's about how much we would squeeze in Lee Summit a day. So just thousands of lemons every week. And you take the lemons, you rinse them off. You'd have to cut them in half. And then there's a little extractor, a little machine that you push it down on. And as the bowl spins, it gets the juice out. And that extractor is always spinning. And so if you go just off, it'll spin and you bust your knuckle on it. Or it'll spray you in the face with lemon juice if you do it just wrong. Or there are all sorts of ways, but on your forearms, it was extremely tough to sit there and do that with all those lemons. We were spending 5 hours a day. It took someone just to squeeze lemons to make lemonade. And so it was the hardest job in the restaurant. And it was the least desirable. But we did that for years and years and years and years. And then about 18 months ago, imagine that scale. So we were actually the #1 purchaser of sun-kissed lemons in the country. Chick-fil-A was. And so for our team member experience, they decided to invest in this. It's the most technologically advanced juicing facility in North America. And so it opened about 18 months ago. And the struggle we always had with juicing was it had to be pasteurized. And you typically pasteurize by heat, which changed the flavor of the juice. And And so what they ended up finding, though, was this technology that you can use pressure to pasteurize juice. So now it's made at a central facility that all they do is service Chick-fil-A, is using high pressure pasteurization. And it's all robotics. It's amazing. But and that facility's out in California, close to the lemon fields. And then there's a lot of byproduct when they juice those. So the lemon rinds can actually be sold, but you have to refrigerate them. So that's why we never sold them. So gosh, that's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but yeah, we do a lot of things the old fashioned way. So now we get the juice shipped to us. And that's how we're making lemonade, but it is squeezed now by robots instead of team members.
That is it. And you actually have your own lemon farm now, I understand too, right? You actually.
Yeah, I think everything's on board with some of those, like everything's a possibility. So the facility's owned, it was like a $55 million facility is what they spent just to juice lemons. So pretty amazing.
Yeah. All right. Any questions for Lance? It is a fascinating company that has such a biblical basis. The Cathy family is an amazing family, and I love just the whole Sabbath and I mean, there's just so many stories related. Any questions, guys, you have for Lance? Here's your chance.
Hey, Lance, a quick question. Why did you drop the lemon icebox pie? I was raised on that, and I hated to see it go.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. That was delicious, wasn't it?
Oh, man.
Yeah, I tell you what, part of the company growing is we started in Hapeville, Georgia. So that's Atlanta, really, really close to the Atlanta airport. So that was the original location. It was actually called the Dwarf House because it was so small. It had 10 stools. It was across from a Ford manufacturing plant. And so that's where we got our start, was in Hapeville, a little plant over there. And so we had a lot of Southern influence to our menu for a long, long time, and still do. Even when I started with Chick-fil-A in 2007, we were a Southeastern regional company.
Right.
It was certainly concentrated, and that's one thing as we've expanded, and we're really a national company now. Dan, our CEO, that's been kind of his work, is taking us from a regional company to a national company. And as of now, we all have the same menu. And so there's some things that play well in certain regions that don't do so well in other regions. We kind of think that, hey, we should have a little bit of mix regionally, but we've stayed away from that because they believe it really disappoints customers to not have their favorite menu item. So there's a few of those Southern influences, like the lemon pie. We used to have cheesecake. Carrot and raisin salad was probably the classic. Everyone likes to talk about that as such a unique side item. It didn't sell, but we had it. And so my favorite story about lemon pie is Truett used to love delivering whole pies to people that were, for whatever reason, happy times, sad times. And so he'd go around town and make and take the pies. But one time he was taking it and was getting in the car and left it on the roof, and it had a lemon meringue topping. But by the time he got to his destination, the pie was there. The meringue was long gone. So he delivered the lemon pie with no meringue on it.
That's good.
Hey, Lance.
Yes, sir.
I went through the selection process in Kansas City. And so I've been to corporate several times and been to the Dwarf House, and Kevin Moss is a good friend, of course, Forrest White in there. But out of that process, I got down to the final two on two different units there in Kansas City. And both times Chick-fil-A made one of the worst decisions that they've ever made, corporately, and that's not selecting me as an operator. So anyway, but out of that journey, which was about a 2-year journey, came some of the best friends that I have. So I got to meet and spend some time with Truett. And so anyway, I'm a fan, and I'm where I'm supposed to be. I still love cooking chicken. And every once in a while, I'll extract a bag of that seasoned coater. And of course, I turkey hunt, and I'll fry up some wild turkey breast with the seasoned coater. I don't
That's
have
great.
a henny penny, but
Yeah.
you know, it works.
That's great. Yep, it's now our new routine in Thanksgiving. Instead of fooling with a turkey roaster or an oven for about 4 or 5 hours, we just drop it in the peanut oil. But don't tell on me. But there's some a deep fried turkey in peanut oil is pretty good. So, well, it's nice to meet you, Cecil. So
Hey, Lance, related to that, the selection process is pretty rigorous and pretty demanding. And I've heard some stats. It's easier to play in the NFL than to get a Chick-fil-A restaurant. Tell us some of the realities of what the selection process is tough.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, it is. Gosh, there's so much I could talk about. There's a ton of interest. We're kind of in a unique season, really, where kind of our profile, our visibility is higher than ever before. It's a unique opportunity. The Cathy family takes care of all the finances. So as far as a franchise fee for, all of our competitors, I think with McDonald's, you have to already be a millionaire to open up one. You have to have a certain amount of liquid assets, and you have to be able to, I think they open like a minimum of 10 restaurants. And so they're really looking for the guy with the biggest wallet is really what it comes down to. And Truett took a different approach. He said, so we're a debt-free company. We'll do 17 billion in sales. We'll be the third largest restaurant in the country, all privately owned, but we're debt-free. And so that slows our growth. It extremely slows our growth. But the only financial contribution I've ever made to Chick-fil-A is $10,000. And so I said, coming out of college, I couldn't afford a hand sink, much less a restaurant. But why Chick-fil-A does that is that allows them to select the best leader instead of just the guy with the biggest wallet. So Chick-fil-A's basically said, we'll take care of the money, you take care of the people. And really that's what we've kind of been our ideal for how we operate the business. So in selection, we select for character. That's the first thing. And so character, then competence, then chemistry. And it's those three things that really help them evaluate. The numbers are staggering. Last year, I saw a presentation. Last year, there were 85,000 people that expressed interest in owning a Chick-fil-A. Well, we open about 120 restaurants a year. And some of those go to existing operators. So you're talking about 100 people being selected out of 85,000.
Wow.
And so with those type of numbers, it's not, there are so many people that get told no that could do it and could do it really well. Chick-fil-A is just in a position where they get to select the best of the best, the cream of the crop. So gosh, there's so much that goes into that, but so our next restaurant, I'm probably not supposed to share this, but oh well, but our next restaurant is going to be in Raymore. And so that's on some alternative, some internal documents. But I've had personally 12 phone calls with people that are applying to be the operator in Raymore. And I've started telling them, okay, this is my 10th phone call with someone that's called me to talk about Raymore. Okay, this is my 11th phone call with someone that's called me to talk about Raymore. And so the selection numbers are staggering. And they'll be the first to admit that they don't always get it right. That's a big challenge in our business with team members. Is an interview process is not really an effective process to determine how hard someone will work. It's a really flawed system. And so that's a challenge. Not every operator makes it. A lot people think it's going to be a lot easier than it really is. A lot of people struggle going home and turning their brain off. We've got people in the building nearly 20 hours a day, and then we get our deliveries overnight. All of our supplies come in overnight, and there's a truck driver unloading 200 boxes every night. And so if you don't have the mental capacity to really just turn it off, and when you're at home, be at home, it can really be a terrible job. It can be a consuming job. If you don't have a leadership team that can run the business, that you trust, it can be consuming, and you can be on a fast track to burnout. So, but with that said, I mean, the operator selection process is it's grueling. I skimmed over it in my process, but I lived on the road out of a suitcase for 18 months for the chance and the possibility. When I was in that development program, at that time there was an 80% selection rate. But they said, look, there's no quota, there's no guarantees. If we don't think any of you all have what it takes, we won't select any of you. And so I went through a season. I spent 3 months in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I was 1,500 miles from my wife. My wife didn't travel with me. And I was leading a team of 90% Hispanics, 25% didn't speak any English. And it just was it was a valley for me. I was dealing with really deep questions like, am I sacrificing my marriage for my career? Is it worth it? What if they say no? It was really, you had to go all in to prove that you were committed. But when I was in New Mexico, it was so difficult to be away. Absent of a belief, with every bone in my body, I believed that it was God's purpose and calling for my life. And without that belief, I wouldn't have persevered. I would have gone somewhere else. But I believed with every bone in my body that it was God's calling for my life. And that's what allowed me to persevere, even when I didn't really want to. So, but certainly there's some operators that are fantastic. I mean, our company has some of the greatest people in the world. We've got some distribution centers that are struggling right now across the country. And so our corporate staff in Atlanta has literally been flying to those places, driving U-Haul trucks into restaurants. Like one operator put on a message us and said, I went into my restaurant this morning and Bubba Cathy was unloading the truck. So Bubba is Truett's son. So he's about a 70-year-old. You're talking about a billionaire. And he didn't know this operator just showed up to work, and there he is unloading his boxes of chicken because they didn't have any truck drivers to get product into the stores. So it's really just unbelievable, the servant leadership that just goes throughout the company. I would probably pee my pants if I walked into my restaurant and Bubba Cathy was there unloading supplies.
But it might happen because that's the spirit of those guys. That is such a cool story. Hey, Lance, talk to us about, Chick-fil-A gets a bad rap. The media, the left does not like Chick-fil-A. And I'm sure that the restaurant in New York has all kinds of challenges because of that. Just address that. It's kind of the elephant in the room. And I love the perspective you guys have on some of the attacks you get. So talked about that.
Yeah. So the I would say the online world is a different reality, is an artificial reality. It's its own little thing. So we really believe that it's about walking the walk and serving everyone with honor, dignity, and respect. So there's all sorts of lies and twists and characterizations about that. And the reality is, I talked earlier about the spotlight of our brand being better than ever before. And so what we have is that when our name is in an article, it's clickbait. Is they know that if they tag us, it's more likely to be clicked on than if they don't. And so it'll grab headlines, it'll grab debate, but really the story, I mean, when it comes to being anti anything, there's never anything that's happened. There's never concrete evidence. We serve all people with honor, dignity, and respect. I've got 160 team members at the Lee Summit location from every walk of life. And I mean that, every walk of life. And so we just really believe that we'll be judged by our actions. And so, we don't engage in any debate or arguments, but really the proof's in the pudding. Certainly my flesh at times wants us to set the record straight. But what's the old phrase is, when you wrestle with pigs, everyone gets dirty. There's really not much good to come out of engaging in a debate or putting a stake in the ground. We're certainly not a political organization, that's for sure. But we also have a unique perspective that I didn't understand until I was on the inside. As we say, we're not a Christian company, and there's no such thing as a Christian company, because Christian means you have a soul and you're going to heaven, and companies don't have souls. Okay? So it's impossible that we're going to go up to heaven and there'd be a company there. We got more important things to do. But what we are unapologetically is a business built on biblical principles. And Truett wrote a book that said, hey, that biblical principles and good business practices can be one and the same. And so unapologetically, we do engage some of those biblical principles, such as second mile service, such as Matthew 5:41. But interestingly, that debate kind of lives online. I've not seen it in person. I talked to someone that was involved. We now have 4 restaurants open in Toronto, Canada. I talked with, and that's last year, we just opened them. And I guess the first location was literally in the center of an LGBT community. And he said, yeah, they protest, they got their signs, and then they get hungry. So they get in line and come eat with us. He said, literally every day they'd come eat with us. And we just love that. We'll go, it's classic. If there's protesters, you go give them bottles of water, and say, hey, I'm still going to love on you. I'm still going to treat you with honor, dignity, and respect. But that doesn't get the pictures. The protesters in line, they're not going to take a picture of that. There's clearly a different agenda and different news story.
Classic. Hey, address the whole Sabbath thing, and you and I know you guys make morning in 6 days and you would make in 7. You know that. I know that. Just address that real quickly, because that's one of the neatest, appealing things. You guys understand that biblical principle very, very well. And I wish the world could understand and appreciate what you guys are doing, because they're missing out on a blessing.
Yeah.
Address that.
Oh my goodness, it's such a blessing. There are so many exhausting weeks that I'm just so thankful for that Sabbath. So most restaurants make about 20% of their revenue on Sunday. It stops us from going into certain business places for sure, but we're committed to it. It's definitely a commitment. It attracts a higher caliber of talent, someone that would like that family time or time to worship. It definitely helps us with our people. So we had Truett, our founder, and then he had 3 kids, and that's who owns the business now. And then so that's Gen 2. Truett passed away about 8 years ago. And then there's Gen 3, which is the grandkids, and they're anywhere from 45 years old to 20 years old. There's about 17 of them. And so Gen 3 has signed a covenant and presented it to their parents that say, we don't know what the future holds, but we will always be privately held and we will always be closed on Sunday. And so I was so glad to hear that because I've got a lot at stake with Gen 3 as they're going to lead the business here soon enough. But we may serve a ham sandwich, or we may serve a pork tenderloin, or we may serve fish. We don't know, but we know we'll always be closed on Sundays and we'll always be privately held. And so that's so important. Interestingly, it didn't really start out as a biblical principle. The first location, the Dwarf House across from that Ford manufacturing plant, was a 24-hour operation. And so Truett, this is 1946. Truett had just come back from the war. He and his brother opened up a restaurant, like I said, the Dwarf House. And Truett would work 12 hours and his brother Ben would work 12 hours. And then Truett would work 12 hours and his brother Ben would work 12 hours. And so they opened up the first week. They did this 6 days in a row and they were tired. They said, hey, I'm tired. Let's close tomorrow. And so they did. It was not a stake in the ground. It was not a founding principle. It was actually, hey, I'm tired. And but certainly since then they've remained committed to it for the right reasons, and we'll always stay closed for sure. And then a fun personal story on that, probably the hottest water I ever got in was 2 years ago. We fed so the rookies for the Chiefs had to buy breakfast on Saturday mornings. And so we had one of the rookies call in and said, hey, I need to order a bunch of breakfast sandwiches for the position play. It was like 35. And so we're like, okay, so we take it up there, and it was going to be a little while till they ate it. So we left one of our warming bags, our black warming bags that plugs in and has a little heater in there. And so that was Saturday morning, and I ended up going out of town with some guys from my small group to ski. And the next day was a little football game against the Patriots, AFC Championship. And gosh, was that 2018 or 2019? Whatever one we lost. So I'm in Colorado, and someone sends me a screenshot that Travis Kelce was on the sideline on the bench. Now, mind you, this is Sunday night, right? Like, this is the big game. And behind him is my black Chick-fil-A warming bag on the sideline for the AFC Championship. And so, right, people in the company see that. They're like, who's delivering food on a Sunday to the Chiefs? And why is there a Chick-fil-A logo on the sideline on Sunday? And so things got dicey. I, at one point, thought I was hopping on the next plane to Atlanta to go explain what happened. And luckily, we talked with, we called our contact and said, why was our bag on the sideline? They said, well, it was really cold and raining. It was raining a little bit. And our intern saw the bag there at the equipment facility. And we've got one helmet that has a lot of electronics in it. And we wanted to see if we could keep it warm and keep it dry. So we grabbed your bag and brought it onto the sideline. So wait a minute. Are you telling me for the AFC Championship, the quarterback's helmet was in a chicken warming bag that had a Chick-fil-A logo on the side? It's like, well, I'm not going to put that in writing, but that's why your bag was on the sideline. So I got an official letter from the equipment manager saying, no, Lance was not delivering Chick-fil-A food on a Sunday to the Chiefs.
Hey, Lance, I'm so glad you shared that story. That's one of those cool stories, because Patrick Mahomes' helmet was being protected by a Chick-fil-A bag. You almost lost your job because of it, but thankfully the equipment manager stood up for you. And I was actually meeting with Lance on a regular basis during that period of time. And man, you were having to say, Jesus, help me out of this one, because that logo was so prominent on that screenshot, and it got big time coverage. So thank you for sharing that story. It's funny now, but at the time it wasn't
funny.
very funny. So that's good. Hey, guys, I've kind of dominated the questions, but any questions you got for Lance today?
I have one, if you don't mind.
Go.
Mr. Spencer, I want to make it clear up front that I have the utmost respect and always will for Mr. Truett Cathy. I saw him well over a decade ago in an interview with Focus on the Family, and he kind of stole my heart and my allegiance. I used to pull into Chick-fil-A's to get lunch back when I was driving an electrical truck, and tell the kid, which to me he was a kid, in the window, he or she, that the owner of the company that he worked for was an American icon and deserves every bit of respect you can give him. He took a stand for some things that weren't popular. And I remember at one point, they had a big protest scheduled for all the Chick-fil-A's, and they were going to be outside with signs protesting because of his stance on marriage. And I was one of the guys that spent almost an hour and a half in line waiting to get my lunch that day because the place was flooded with people showing support. And I'm glad I was able to be there. But one of the things that bothered me, and I don't know if you're the person to ask this or not, and if you don't feel comfortable answering it, I understand. The big hubbub that went on politically about dropping the Salvation Army as a group that Chick-fil-A donated to for so long. Is there anything about that you can clear up? Because I know the news hype was out of this world, and I don't listen to the news anymore, partially because of that. But was there a particular reasoning for that? Are you guys still supporting the Salvation Army?
Yeah. So you're definitely a close follower, picking up on that. That's for sure. So I'll share this with you that, so there was Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day. That was absolutely crazy. But in a weird way, you know, how the world responded, that was really the day that our business and sales and our kind of profile has kind of skyrocketed since then. That was really the day. I think that was 2011. We've just been on a tear since then as a company, with really as much business as we can keep up. So it wasn't Truett, our founder, that made any statements. It wasn't him that said anything about traditional marriage, but it was Dan, who was our president at the time, was speaking to the Baptist Free Press. So kind of an internal Christian communication. And he said that he believed in the biblical definition of marriage. And the quote that people didn't like was right after that, where he said, "I think we're invoking God's wrath on our country when we seek to redefine that." And that was all he ever said. And it was, you know, a personal statement. And so that's where got a lot of the media attention. And at times we got called a hate group. But really, we've committed to just walk that out and just do what we do and provide second mile service and treat everyone with honor, dignity, and respect. The giving has changed. Like I said, our trajectory has changed quite a bit since then. So we have the WinShape Foundation, and then you have Chick-fil-A as a corporation. So the WinShape Foundation is the family's charity, the ownership family. And then what was created out of that was the company's charity, the Chick-fil-A Foundation. And so, you know, the media rarely gets the story right. I mean, it's unbelievable knowing the inside, like the real truth, and yet what's seen publicly. And that's what I said earlier. Sometimes I wish we would correct the record and say, no, you actually got all that wrong. In fact, you didn't even spell our company's name correctly. Here's how you spell our company's name. But the story just gets twisted and twisted. But I know from the inside that so when that giving change happened, it was more moving from the Chick-fil-A Foundation to the privately held Families Foundation. I've got the honor of serving on the Kansas City FCA board, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so that was one of the organizations that that a lot of the media had problems with, that because FCA has a statement of faith that affirms traditional marriage, that then it's a hate group. And so that's where they jump from, is the statement of faith, traditional marriage, hate group. So, but I know from the inside and my involvement with FCA that there was no money lost. There was no change in contribution. The only change was which checking account it came from. I know for me personally, we responded, and we have the Salvation Army kettles that we host at our local restaurant. So those organizations and charities are still being supported. They actually do they don't talk about it a lot, but they do a corporate tithe. They not only give 10% personal, but they give, I'm sure they give way more than 10% personal, but they also give 10% corporately to the WinShape Foundation. And so when I talked earlier about the servant leadership model being taught in all countries over the world, that's what's funding that. There's actually 8 ministries under the umbrella of WinShape. And so one of them came to Lee Summit for the first time this summer. Summit Church there on View High Drive hosted a day camp. And that day camp was funded by WinShape, by the Cathy family. So there were 200 kids that were able to participate. And what that happens, and when we partner with those churches, is the church can just take all the curriculum and all the supplies, and they actually send staff to camp counselors. And so it's really kind of a plug and play opportunity for those churches all across the country. And so that's one local example of where the WinShape Foundation is funding. But as our company's grown up, that's where which charity should be supported by which entity has changed. So that's kind of the inside story.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Hey, Lance, we had a question someone asked on the chat line. The video you showed, is that available to view? How can people view that for personal use?
Yeah, it is. Let me see if I can drop the link in the chat.
Okay.
You can. It's on YouTube. It's Every Life Has a Story. So you can Google that. But yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
So
thank you for that. That's, again, such a powerful picture. Guys, any other questions for Lance? I mean, I could talk to Lance for another hour, because I just find this a very fascinating conversation. It's right in the trenches ministry is what it is. And I love, Lance, that your goal to see people come to Christ and to have 4 this year alone, that is so special. And then I know about what you did yesterday with the grief of a 16-year-old losing mom and dad within just a few days of each other, in the ministry you had to that person as well. So you're in ministry. You are a pastor. You are a shepherd. You are serving thousands of people a day, including 160 team members. So I love what you're doing. Absolutely love what you're doing. Any questions, guys, for Lance?
Hey, Lance, this is Scott Ridings. Thank you for your just your message today. I'm a small business owner myself. I'm a physical therapist. We contract with a hospital down in Butler, Missouri. Have about 17 employees. And the things that you talk about, the servant leadership, that's what I've been wanting to do and have been doing the last several years, where I'm at, glorifying God with our company, and the opportunity to be able to show our staff that, and it's been amazing to see how God has definitely blessed that. But a lot of the principles you talk about, it's God's principles. And, we get the opportunity, obviously we're serving people that are obviously coming physically hurting. But we also know it's more than just the physical body that we're there to treat. And so our staff is seeing that. I've actually got a student right now from Southwest Baptist, and she has the opportunity to obviously learn on the job. That's part of the training. But, she had the opportunity yesterday. She's following me around, and I'm actually treating inpatients. So not only do I manage the company, it's kind of unique because I'm also under the umbrella of the hospital. So I'm also a director of the hospital or in the rehab department. So I'm owning it. I'm treating patients, and managing it. So it's been a blessing to me to be able to shepherd my staff. And but she had an opportunity yesterday to see opportunity to treat a lady that I knew was a sister in Christ. She's in her 80s, having some definitely some end-stage COPD issues. And she was just not in a mood to want to do anything. I could tell she was very frustrated. But I said, "Have you been in the Word of God today?" She goes, "No." I said, "Well, let's just pull out some Philippians." So I'm sitting there reading it to her. So my student is seeing this interact. And I think we've had some discussions, but not real deep yet. But she's seeing that lived out in her clinical. And I think my goal is to be able to be authentic with whoever I'm with. And so on the team, it's been a blessing to see that. Been able to, my wife's on the team. She oversees our front office. See opportunity for patients to come in and our staff to see those principles lived out. I think God's honoring that and blessing that. So thank you for sharing that. One other side note, my son, who's 18, he's a team member at the Blue Springs location and just thoroughly enjoying it. So I love for him to be in that environment because I know the background of your company and how it lives it out missionally. So anyway, thanks so much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Scott. That's great. The Blue Springs location is led by Brandon Jackley, and he's a good friend of Greg Griffin's, good friend of mine. I talked to him for about 30 minutes yesterday. Just a phenomenal individual and just such a great man of God. So super thankful to be in partnership shoulder to shoulder with him. But yeah, certainly the thing with team members or employees, make no mistake about it, we're not a Christian only. That's not a requirement for hiring. And in fact, I get really excited when it's evident that they aren't, when it's evident that, so my favorite interview question is, who are your heroes and why? And it tells me who they're aspiring to be, who they look up to, right? It tells me their vision for themselves. And it's so awesome to see. We've got so many stories of someone that comes into the company and, a couple days in, they'll say, "Wait, this is different. What's different?" And it's like, okay, God, here we go. And what I've tried to do, instead of putting on my Superman cape every day and trying to save the world, is to create a platform and an environment where different influential leaders have the freedom to have those conversations in their circle of influence. And so providing an environment where that's accepted and celebrated and encouraged, where we talk about having those real life conversations, because that 16-year-old female may need a really heart-to-heart conversation, but I'm probably not the best one to have that, right? And so when you're leading from that level, we want that trickle down culture to take effect and be celebrated with that. And those with ears will hear. Sometimes the best thing I can do for someone. I had an 18-year-old that I had to fire, and it was an uncomfortable termination. He was actually a leader in his youth group, and this was on a Monday that I found out he was stealing from me, and I knew he was supposed to preach from the podium on Wednesday, but I knew that I had the obligation to terminate him for the sake of his future self, to say, you stole from me and I can't not terminate you. And so sometimes it's honoring and serving them in good times and bad. But we also love when they come full circle. Maybe it's a year later, maybe it's 2 years later, saying, "Hey, I should have been terminated. So thank you."
Lance, one of the guys on the chat line is a friend of your dad's, Greg Bedell. You know Greg and know about the wonderful history your dad has with him. He said, "Lance, tell us how much influence your mom and dad have had on your choice to become an owner, Chick-fil-A owner, and how big of an influence they are now that they've come through this incredible fight with pancreatic cancer." You started talking about your dad on the front end. Let's close it out by just answering that question.
Yeah, super thankful to be raised in a godly home. I grew up going to Birchwood Baptist Church over by the stadiums, and super thankful for that. Um, I talked a little bit more about this in the podcast that I did with Abundant Life, but Dad was a financial advisor for his career, and he loved helping people. He really showed me what it meant to be an entrepreneur that helped people. It didn't matter if you had $1 million in your account or $10,000 in your account. He was willing to meet with you and help you and coach you through some of those financial decisions. And then my mom, growing up, she ran a nonprofit that helped pregnant teens get their GED. That was with the Independent School District and Blue Springs School District a little bit. And so with Mom, I really saw what it meant to have a vocation that was also a purpose, that your calling could also be your career. And so it was that mix. And I think both of those things really were displayed for me at a young age. You know, Dad has the entrepreneurial fire in the belly, that ambition to build something and grow something. And then Mom really showed me what it meant to care for people. That there might be other careers to make more money or to have more income, but really it comes down to influence. And you know, as it relates, kind of fast forward, is I got relocated to this restaurant in Lee Summit probably earlier than most at my age, kind of at a younger age. And I know that was the Lord's just sovereignty and provision, bringing me back to Kansas City to walk alongside with my father through this cancer journey. I know that's the reason now. There's certainly, it's been an honor and a great ride to lead the business during this season, but to have a dad that was put on hospice care, and I had a moment where I was 100% convinced that I had my last conversation of my life with my father. There were some things I needed to say. Like, Dad, I love you. I hope you're proud of me. I'm going to miss you. There were some things we wanted to say that I said because I thought it was my last chance to say them. And so to see the Lord move in a significant way through the prayers and petitions of saints such as yourselves is just an incredible blessing for us. And so we're on bonus time. We just finished what I said the summer of yes. If there was ever a question, hey, should we go to the Royals game? It was yes. Hey, should we go to Worlds of Fun with the kids? It was yes. And so we just finished the summer of yes, to say yes to whatever opportunities we had. And, you know, the reality is we're all on bonus time.
Yeah.
And so I hope you go into a season where you can have a season of yes. And so super thankful for your prayers. I was walking out. Actually, here's to close it out. So we were walking out of the restaurant. My dad was actually paralyzed for 6 months in a wheelchair, and in November went to rehab at Mid-America Rehab Hospital and is now walking with canes. So just an incredible story. And so he's slow. He's walking with canes out of the restaurant. And Damian Cooper shouts at me. Damian was in the drive-thru, and I said something to him. And he goes, "Is that your dad?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, it's good to see him walking. Look at that." Mm-hmm. And so I said, "Dad," I said, "that was actually one of the hundreds that was praying for you." He said, "Son, it was thousands." Mm. So all glory to God for that. I'm super thankful for y'all praying for him, and we're just so fortunate that God answered those prayers.
That's a great way to end it, Lance. Thank you so much.